God is present here and now. And in that awareness, let us pray. Father, Mother God, we give thanks for this opportunity to be open to the awareness of your presence. To allow your love to flow through us. To allow your guidance to be loud and clear. Here in this moment, we give thanks. And for our friends who are about to embark upon their journey, let us hold them in the light. Let us see their journey to be safe and speedy. And let us realize that this moment is our creation. We create it as we wish. And so we see this moment as fulfilling. We see this moment as embraced and penetrated, permeated with love. We see this moment as a perfect outpicturing of your will. Here, now. And for those in our experience who seem to have a need for this awareness of the presence of your love in their moment, we hold them in consciousness and see them lifted and embraced, moved forward, protected by your love. And for this opportunity to be ministers of your word, we give thanks. And so it is that together we say, Amen. Well, choices, choices, choices. We've had a journey over the course of the last several weeks of the realization of who we are as creators, as those that are expressions of God in this moment, as those that are empowered to make our lives fulfilling. And yet we look around and we see all of the stuff going on. We see the wealth disparity. We see the political system seeming to fragment and disintegrate. We see the economic fortunes of such disparity in the world, of the haves and the have-nots, and seemingly that the gap is growing. We see the challenges that are before us as being perhaps unsolvable because they seem to be getting worse and worse as the days go on. And we ask the question, well, how can my beliefs, these beliefs that I am empowered, the beliefs that I am an expression of God in this moment, the beliefs that I have the ability here in this moment to make my life fulfilling and to bless each and every person in our experience, how can those beliefs be so at odds with that which I see happening out in the world? We might even go further to say, how can my beliefs be true if that demonstration is occurring? And I would suggest to you that the problem is not that your beliefs are wrong. It's not that we are not empowered to be the fulfillment of God in this moment, but rather it is the behavior that is so prevalent out there that we're paying attention to. And we're attempting to change the behavior when in fact that's not the problem. Einstein offered us this. He says we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. We cannot solve the behaviors in the realm of behaviors. We have to solve the behaviors from a different realm, from a superior realm, from a realm that will influence the behaviors, not trying to change the behaviors themselves. So, when we look at the disparity of economic fortune, and we look at the political factors that seem to be gnawing away at the very foundation of democracy, and when we see terrorism seeming to appear, or appearing, not seeming to appear, but appearing in all corners of the planet, and we are not immune to that. When we see those things, we must not be in despair. We can't throw up our hands and say, well, there's nothing that I can do about it. Because indeed, there is everything that we can do about it. So Einstein also offered us this. He said there are two ways to live. You can live as if nothing is a miracle, and you can live as if everything is a miracle. So that's really our first choice. How do we want to live? Do we see the universe as a friendly place or an unfriendly place? Do we expect that our hopes are going to be dashed on the shoals of the forces of the world? Or do we expect that we are going to prevail, that our life will be an expression of the fulfilling aspects of the divine? Last Sunday, I was headed home from our gathering, and I stopped at Costco. And so I was confirming with Shannon the things that we needed, what's absent in the refrigerator, or in the cabinets, and so, anything else you need. And so I was updating the grocery list, and I had my phone out. And so I got out of the car, and right by the car there was a shopping cart that had been left. I usually park at the far end of the parking lot, and there was a cart that was left there. And indeed, when I come out with my groceries, I will leave the cart in about that same place. So whenever I go into Costco, I always look for carts that are out on the far end, and I'll take one in so that I don't feel guilty when I take one out. Okay, so I've paid my debt, right? The karmic cycle is satisfied. All right. Well, I got out of the car, and I had my phone in my hand, and I reached up for the handle of the cart to lift up the front wheels and lift it up over the berm and back onto the sidewalk between the parking strips. And as I went to get the car, it knocked the phone out of my hands. And I have a protective cover on my phone. It turns out that it did not protect the corners of my phone. And I've dropped my phone, 25 or 30 times, but usually when it falls out of my hands, I'll put my foot out, and it'll glance and fall without any problem on the floor or wherever. And this time I was so shocked that, wait a minute, what happened to my phone? And it was on its way to the ground, and I did not have time to do the soccer deflection. And it landed right on the corner, right where it did not have any protection. And it bent the bezel. It actually landed on a stone. It bent the bezel, and it cracked the glass. Now, for those of you that know that I do a lot of reading on my phone, that cracked glass was something that I was just, oh man. Okay, at that moment, I had the opportunity to look as if everything is a miracle, or nothing is a miracle, right? How many of you have been in that position? How many of you have been in that position in the last week? Okay. How about in the last day? Yeah, okay. So this is something that we often confront, is we have these and we respond either as if everything is a miracle or nothing is a miracle. And in that moment, it was no, my phone, right? I mean, the phone was just fine. It had everything that I needed. It had all the speed I needed. It had plenty of storage. It made phone calls as it's supposed to. It drew up maps and it did everything that it was supposed to do, and it was actually in good shape, except for the lens was splintered. And I didn't feel that I could read my books on it. So I went into Costco, and lo and behold, you know what they sell in Costco? They sell cell phones. Well, I walked up to the cell phone counter, and I saw that, yes, indeed, they had the new Galaxy S6. And in the back of my mind, I'd been looking at, wow, that looks like it's got more power, it's got more storage, and it's really a faster machine because it's got this 8 parallel processor system that, gosh, I don't know what I could use it for, but I'm sure it'll be faster. So I let go of this idea that everything is not a miracle and changed my attitude to everything is a miracle, because now I have an excuse to buy the S6. All right. So, S6. But we are confronted with these opportunities on a week-to-week basis, on a day-to-day basis, on an hour-to-hour basis. Is it a miracle? Is everything a miracle? Is this really the way the divine plan is to unfold? Or is this just another obstacle that I'm going to have to confront and overcome? Well, the choice that we make there will lead to our next choice. And our next choice is going to be, how are we going to conduct our activities? How are we going to behave in this present moment? Are we going to behave in a way that is consonant with our beliefs? Or are we going to behave in a way that is not? Are we going to behave in a way that lifts and affirms and extends our beliefs? Or are we going to allow ourselves to be frustrated by the way things are unfolding? Neil Donald Walsh, I opened up a book that had been sent to me. It turns out it was published last year. Maybe some of you have read it. God's Message to the World. Has anyone read that one? I was surprised that he had written 29 books in his career. I had no idea. 9 of them were from his Conversations with God series, and this was the last one of his series, the most recent anyway, of his Conversations with God series. And in it, he talks about this very thing of what is our reaction to the events of our lives, and how do we have the power to respond to those. He offers us in this, he says, all behaviors are sponsored by beliefs. Now think about that for just a moment. All behaviors are sponsored by beliefs. Our behavior in this world is going to be a reflection of what our beliefs are. So we may declare that our beliefs are that it's all good, everything in God's hands, that we are here as an expression of the divine, or we may buy into the evidence that we see out there, and in fact it's those things that we believe in, that we reflect the behaviors in our beliefs. That is, we take on the demonstration that we see and we accept that as being true. So the first question I would ask you is, when you have something that seems to be an obstacle, what is your first reaction? What is the first reaction you have is really going to be an expression of your beliefs, regardless of what you may claim to be your beliefs. Your first reaction If you are confronted with an obstacle and your first reaction is, oh no, I would suggest to you that you question your beliefs. That your beliefs are going to be more closely aligned with the demonstration out there than they are with those emotionally held or emotionally declared beliefs of my being an affirmative person, that I see that everything is in God's hands, that I am here to be that expression of God right now. If that's my belief, then my reaction is probably going to be something more akin to, oh, well, that's interesting. I wonder how it is that I am supposed to respond here to allow that God presence to be reflected in this moment. So, all behaviors are sponsored by beliefs. You cannot make a long-term change in behaviors without addressing the beliefs that underlie them. Your world is facing enormous problems right now, and you must solve the problems at the level of belief. You cannot solve the problems at the level of behavior. Seek to change beliefs, not behaviors. After you change a belief, the behavior will change by itself. How often is it that we declare that the behavior has to change? How often do we see that the response of society to terrorism, or the response of society to economic disparity, or the response by society of the problems that seem to be facing our world, that we respond by saying this behavior has to change? How can we change the behavior? Walsh says it's not the behavior that we have to change. What we have to change are the beliefs. And the beliefs are held, each of us, individually. There is no belief of society, right? There is merely an accumulation of beliefs of the individuals in that society. Society in itself cannot hold a belief. Now, there is a universal consciousness. I agree to that. There is a societal consciousness or a cultural consciousness. I agree with that. But the beliefs themselves are really held by individuals. So if we are wanting to change the behavior, it's not about doing something to legislate the change, but rather we need to look at the source of the behavior. And the source of the behavior, the sponsoring of the behavior, is the beliefs themselves. And who must we change? The only ones we can. Right? It is only us that we can change. We can't change anyone else. And so the practice then is, what must I do in order to change my beliefs? If I've responded in a way that seems to validate what I see demonstrated out there, then it is my beliefs that need to be changed. And in unity, we have the 5 pillars of faith. And the 5 pillars of faith are, there's one power and one presence. That's our premise. The one Son of God, the Christ, abides in each of us. That's the proposition. The thoughts we hold in mind manifest in our experience, and that's a description of the process. And we can prove that process. We can prove that process. We'll use that process to prove that the proposition and that the premise are correct as well. But the process we can prove. And the tools of transformation of consciousness are prayer, meditation, denials, and affirmations. And that's the practice. And that's really where we change our beliefs. It's through the practice of denials and affirmations, meditation, and prayer. Okay? Now, let's look at this. You've heard me say this before. I'm nonetheless going to repeat this so that there is no confusion among those who are here today. A denial is not it's not sweeping aside an observation. It's not sweeping aside some aspect of our reality to say that is not happening right now. The bus is not coming towards me. I'm standing in the middle of the street. That bus, I deny that bus by saying it's not coming towards me. Well, that may end up being an opportunity for you to experience God's presence much sooner than you expected. A denial is to remove the power of some demonstrated behavior or some demonstrated aspect of reality. Okay? So a denial is not about saying that something is not happening, but rather that that which is happening does not have the power to change my consciousness. Okay? If I am looking at challenges in my life, that I have a relationship issue, for instance, with someone at work, we can deny that seeming problem is going to adversely affect my understanding of who I am. Someone tells me that I am that my performance is inferior. I could take that on and I could say, oh man, I'm not worth much, right? The alternative is for me to say that expression of their opinion does not validate what I know, does not invalidate what I know to be true. I am an intelligent person. I am a motivated person. I am, okay? So whatever it is that you want to choose as your affirmation, first deny that which seems to be in opposition to the affirmation has any power. The affirmation itself is to be an expression of truth. And so the expression of truth is, I am a motivated person. I am an intelligent person. I am a powerful person. Meditation is about quieting the mind so that we let go of that out there to allow us to come into resonance with that underlying vibration that is God. So meditation is about the quieting of the mind, and prayer is about communing with the divine. In Unity, we have what is called the 5-step method of prayer, and part of that prayer method is meditation prior to realization. Realization is the heart of prayer itself. Realization is knowing your union with God. So there is relaxation, there is concentration, there is meditation, there is the knowingness, the realization, and there is the appreciation. Those are the 5 steps. So you relax into your time, you concentrate on your purpose for this time. Let's say that your purpose for this time is to release let's say it's to release your ill feelings about someone. So you state your purpose in that period of concentration, and then you move into meditation, which is not about thinking about anything at all, but rather it's quieting that process. And then in the realization is the practice of knowing your union with God. And then the appreciation as the 5th step is to affirm and to realize that it is so. Okay? Well, as we look then at this 5 pillars of faith, we'll say, well, what does Jesus have to say about this? And in Mark 9:17 through 29, someone from the crowd answered him, "Teacher, I brought you my son. He has a spirit that makes him unable to speak. And whenever it seizes him, it dashes him down, and he foams and grinds his teeth and becomes rigid. And I asked your disciples to cast it out, but they could not do so." What do you think? I mean, what would we call that condition now? Epilepsy? Probably. But I'm not a doctor and I don't play one on TV. He answered them, "You faithless generation, how much longer must I be among you? How much longer must I put up with you? Bring him to me." And they brought the boy to him, and when the spirit saw him, Jesus, immediately it threw the boy into convulsions, and he fell on the ground and rolled about, foaming at the mouth. Jesus asked the father, "How long has this been happening to him?" And the father said, "From childhood. It has often cast him into the fire and into the water to destroy him. But if you are able to do anything, have pity on us and help us." So here is the guard that is coming to Jesus to say, "I need your help. I need your touch on on my son to heal him." And what does Jesus say? Jesus said to him, "If you are able, all things can be done for the one who believes." It's not about me touching him, but it's about you and your belief. It is about how you see your son. And based upon how you see your son will see himself in the way that reflects how you see him. When Jesus saw that immediately the father of the child cried out, "I believe, help my unbelief." Now, how many of you have been confronted with that, where you have been told, "Well, you just need to believe this," and you say, "Okay, I believe that, but I'm not really sure. I'm still a little bit hesitant about committing full bore to that belief." Well, this is the same thing that's happening here. And when Jesus saw that a crowd came running together, Jesus rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, "You spirit that keep this boy from speaking and hearing, I command you, come out of him and never enter him again." What was Jesus doing at that moment when he was declaring that? What was he doing? I'm sorry? He was denying the power, okay, but who was he influencing? The Father, right? Because the Father is the one that needed some help in his unbelief. After crying out and convulsing him terribly, it came out, and the boy was like a corpse, so that most of them said, "He is dead." But Jesus, and that, that's what's out there, right? All of those affirming, quote, affirming statements out there. "Oh, well, that's beyond hope. The kid's dead. Dig a hole. Let's get him in the ground before he starts to sink." Well, that's what we often are confronted with when we are being challenged by our beliefs or by the demonstration that opposes our beliefs. After crying out and convulsing him terribly, it came out, and the boy was like a corpse, so that most of them said, "He is dead." But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up, and he was able to stand. And when Jesus had entered the house, his disciples asked him privately, "Why could we not cast it out?" And Jesus said, "What? This must be cast out with prayer." Why prayer? What is it about prayer that must be that is important in this process? Because you, the disciples, did not hold the reality of your union with God. Pray and realize your union with God. Allow your beliefs to be so firmly rooted in this realization of your union with God that there is no doubt in your mind. This kind can come out only through prayer. And so it is that practice of denials and affirmation, meditation, and prayer that allows us to shift our beliefs, to transform our partial beliefs, our tentative beliefs, into a fullness and a credible, solid structure of beliefs that then will guide us and will allow us to be responsive to that phone dropping on the pavement and seeing the miracle of that. "Oh, I have an opportunity to buy a new phone, and my wife's not going to get angry with me." She maybe get angry with my klutziness of dropping the phone, but that's okay. I can handle that. Okay, so this is our practice. This is how we make a change in our beliefs. But how do we make a change in the beliefs out there? How often have you tried to evangelize and found that, oops, that not only didn't feel good, it didn't work? Person still has the same beliefs they had before. Well, it turns out Neil Donald Walsh suggests guerrilla marketing. He says, be willing to talk. Be willing to converse. Be willing to engage others with respectful conversation. And it's not about the changing their beliefs, but rather it is a confident expression of your perspectives and your worldview. And allow others to be willing and able to make the changes themselves. Because the beliefs, the change of beliefs is not going to come from out there. It's going to come from our own experience, isn't it? Isn't that how our beliefs are formed anyway? It's through the culmination of our experiences and our observations of the outcome from our practices. Walsh also makes the point that there are so many people, millions of people, that are unwilling to ask themselves a very basic question. Are my beliefs valid? When we are willing to ask that question of, are my beliefs valid, then we are questioning our basic assumption. And questioning our basic assumption is important for our continual growth. Because of what we believe today may not be what proves to be a valid belief tomorrow. And it is important that we not just assume that the beliefs that I held as a 15-year-old are valid for me as a 68-year-old. Right? In fact, every moment in that spectrum of time, I had the opportunity, not very often taken, but I had the opportunity to question my beliefs. And in questioning my beliefs, I would be able to either affirm or reject a belief that at this point in time seems to be invalid. So this is really what we are choosing. We are choosing in each moment to say, is this comporting with my beliefs, or is this something that needs to be re-examined? If my belief is to be re-examined, I am empowered to look at that and to grow from that. That is indeed how we grow. And that is indeed how we are able to lift our consciousness such that the obstacles that are thrown in our way are regarded as just another opportunity to lift up, to grow, and to affirm the righteousness of God, of our understanding of our role as being the expressions of God in this moment. This is really what we're here for, is to affirm the love in all things, to be the expression of love in all things, even when it seems that our beliefs are being challenged by what's happening out there. Choices, choices, choices. Constantly confronted with choices. How do we choose? We'll have our meditation. As we come into our meditation, breathing into this moment, realizing this moment, allowing ourselves in this moment to transform, to be open to the expression of love. Quietly we settle into the awareness of our hearts. We let go of that which happened in the last moment, and we allow ourselves to be present, unencumbered in this moment. We feel the love arise and embrace us. Move through us. Touching each aspect of our awareness, our consciousness. And in this awareness of God's love, we give thanks. And so it is that we express this appreciation with, thank you, God. And as we come back into this time and space, let us come back with the Lord's Prayer.